Our scripture today is Psalm 8. Holy One, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have placed your glory above the heavens. From the lips of infants and children, you bring forth words of power and praise, to answer your adversaries and to silence the hostile and the vengeful. When I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you set in place, what is humanity that you should be mindful of us? Who are we that you should care for us? You have made us barely less than God and crowned us with glory and honor. You have made us responsible for the works of your hands, putting all things at our feet, all the sheep and oxen, yes, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, and whatever swims the paths of the seas. Creator, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all of the earth. Thanks be to God.
Well, I'd like to start with gratitude. After 6 months of preaching to cell phones, it's really wonderful to lay out as best I can. I can only get, I think, 16 frames on my computer, but it is wonderful to see faces, and I'm just gonna kind of skip around. I hope that won't feel intrusive to you, but I've always needed to be really close to the congregation in order to preach. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but however close the stage was, I would always get as close as I could get, and my toes would come over the edge of it. Because I always feel, I know it may not feel like this to you, but it always feels like a conversation to me, because I can see the faces, I can see the furrowed brows, I can see the when something isn't making sense, sometimes when it is. So I've kind of been like Samson after the haircut, trying to preach and into an iPhone. So thank you so much. I know this is awkward, but it's as close to community as we can get. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I want to share a kind of question that has really been in many ways at the core of my life, at least when I was very young. Some of my clearest memories of childhood was lying in bed asleep and asking the question, who am I? What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? What do I bring to the world? That's the question I hear Psalm 8 asking as well. And I'll never forget getting to communicants class in my church in Dallas, Texas, and realizing they weren't going to address any of the questions that mattered to me. Like, they were going to talk about why am I here? I was talking about the nature of Christ, which is fine, but that wasn't my question. So in confirmation, I learned the answers to questions I'd never even thought of asking before. And I think Scripture calls us to those original questions. I think that's, to me, what religion is. I think you can add a whole lot of things to that, but I think that search for our source, that search for the tie that binds us to each other, that question, who am I? What is the purpose of my life? Why is there suffering? I think that's really the fuel that guides us on our journey. I think a terrible mistake religion makes is treating life as the question and religion as the answer. I think just the opposite is the case, that life is the answer we're going to get. And religion helps us ask the questions that can make that a living reality for us, can lead us to the roots of our being, the interconnectedness of our being. And that's what I think happens at Christmas for so many people. I think people for whom religion doesn't work all year long, at Christmas time, there's something mystical and cosmic happening at the same time. The man who wrote our hymn today, What Child Is This?, was an insurance salesman, which I just love. Is somebody off the streets. I think he was a manager, but he wasn't a theologian. And he suffered from depression. We had another hymn writer at Christmas, one of the great hymns of Christmas, somebody that really suffered from depression. And the reason I think that's important is that when people can find joy, maybe not happiness, but kind of joy and peace in the midst of hard times, then the good times come easy. When we try to build our foundation when everything is working, it really easily crumbles when times are bad. I mean, the good times are easy. And there are times when maybe we shouldn't be that profound. I mean, just enjoy life, enjoy the moment. I think playing is a part of life. But when life isn't working for us, those profound questions come up within us. And I think if religion didn't teach us that is doubt, I think if religion taught us that is that profound longing for our own roots and a discontent with superficiality in terms of the answers. So this hymn writer got deathly sick, had a near-death experience, and the poetry that he wrote afterwards was an expression of that. The hymn, as it's popularly presented, has two questions and one kind of an affirmation. First question is, what child is this? In a traditional religion, that's all about Jesus. In mystical and universal religion, it's about Jesus, but it's also about us. It's asking the question of Psalm 8. What does it mean to be a human being in the cosmos? Not just who is Jesus, but who are we? And the second question is, why is he in such mean estate, such lowly, unhospitable place? And I think that's the question of, why is there suffering? Why aren't things right? Why can't we be happy all the time? Why is it so hard to figure things out? So that's kind of the second question. And the third question is, I think, an affirmation saying yes to life. But as we go through this, that first question is very important. Now, I want to start with a paraphrase of Psalm 8, that beginning. I ran across this and I really like it. Because in Psalm 8, the psalmist looks and sees all the beauty of the universe, has no question about God, but feels small and unnecessary. This is from Sylvia Purdy doing a paraphrase. She goes, God, our living God, you are amazing. You are higher than I can look. You are wider than I can see. We hear you in the laughter of little children. We can hear you in the babble of a baby. You don't need words to tell of your power. But why do you need us at all? We are so small and the world is so big. The stars are so many and space is so enormous. Why do I matter? Now, see, that's the living question. That's not something that's going to bore a little kid in confirmation class, right? Those are the questions written in our very timber. In this Christmas story, like all of the infant narratives around the world, where God comes in the form of a baby, it has a kind of curious, takes us to a curious place, because in the story, everybody's waiting for the Messiah to come, and they're expecting, a warrior on a horse, and they show up and it's a baby, right? That's not going to help you in your lifetime, right? This baby is not going to deliver you from your oppression immediately. So what good is a baby? And I think the infant narratives remind us that babies awaken something in us that's hard to find any other way. This is what Van Gogh said. He struggled a lot with depression, which is why I quote him a lot. But he said, If one needs the feel of something grand, something infinite, something that makes one feel aware of God, one need not go far to find it. I think that I see something deeper, more infinite, more eternal than the ocean in the expression of the eyes of a little baby when it wakes in the morning and coos or laughs because it sees the sun shining on its cradle. These stories of God entering our life as a person are incredibly helpful in helping us realize the worth and value of just our naked humanity. The word infant means something that can't speak. A baby is absolutely helpless. And yet when we look in the face of a baby, something transformative happens. I don't know about you, but sometimes it weirds me out a little bit. I mean, it's very personal, but there's something very deep and profound there. Sometimes I almost feel like I'm seeing a window into the cosmos through those two little eyes. They haven't learned anything yet, but they look like they know everything. I mean, every baby is a little Buddha looking back at us. In fact, the birth narrative of Buddha, and again, these are poems. Nobody knows what happened when Jesus was born. Nobody knows what happened when Buddha was born, but poets talk about it to bring up this aspect of the mystical experience. And Buddha's born. He does a little dance. He does 7 steps. And then according to some translators says, worlds above, worlds below, there's never been anybody like me, which is what every baby is saying, right? That's what a baby is. When we look and see that light in those eyes, it's a reminder that they are both personal beings, but they're also cosmic manifestations. There's something extraordinary in the eyes of a baby. And we may not be able to see that in ourselves anymore, but that baby's in there somewhere in every one of us. So the first question is, what child is this? Which I hear is the same question as Psalm 8 is asking. What does it mean to be a human being in the cosmos? What is a human being that we have worth in the world? And then the second question is, why is this baby in such a horrible place? A mean estate means, is in a cattle stall. And we could ask that question of children all over the world. And I think that's what Christmas is supposed to do. If instead of hearing that Jesus had been born in Bethlehem, if you were told that Jesus was born in Flint, Michigan, I think you would resonate that the mystical and the just are not two separate things. That the joy that we feel of being alive, of the many loves that we have around us, those are easily extinguished. That what justice is extending that hope for joy to everyone, to every being. And that's a lot of the prayers you see around the world for the happiness of all beings. That paraphrase that I mentioned, we are so small, why do you need us at all? We're so helpless. But when we look at a baby, there's a gift there for us. Something that happens in my life a lot is that some tragedy happens and it's senseless and you just can't make any sense of it. Somebody loses their soulmate, somebody's diagnosed with a terminal disease. And when somebody puts a baby on that person's lap, everything is transformed. The pain is not gone, right? The cold reality is still there. But that child illumines something. And I think part of that is an affirmation of life. Sandberg said that every baby is God's opinion that life should go on. But I think it reminds us that we are needed. And sometimes that's the gift that helps us go on. Because sometimes we can't find that strength for ourselves. Sometimes it's just not there for ourselves. But when we remember that other people need us, then we remember we are important. So that third verse, which I don't think we have in our translated hymn today, but it's so bring this child the gifts, honor, laud, all of these sorts of things. It shifts into kind of royal pageantry. And the idea, if we realized how important every one of us is, how every one of us is an expression of some cosmic event. You have your personal life, but when you think about the universe, it took a long time. It took billions of years for you to become manifest. So to realize how important you really are. You can't always discover that for yourself selfishly. To ask what the purpose of my life is sort of like asking, what is the meaning of the letter R? Right? Letter R is a part of a larger system of meaning. And you are a branch on the tree of life. Right? You're not just an object. You're not just an accident. You have been created or evolved to fit into the web of life. You have a mission, whether you realize it or not. And sometimes looking into a baby's face and realizing how important we are to the vulnerable, to the helpless, to the weak, reminds us that our life has purpose. I remember, let's see who said it. So I can hide my quotes a whole lot better this way. So that's good. Let's see. Is Erasmus. I forgot who said it. Who was a Catholic at the time of the Reformation and was sort of a defender of traditional religion. But he said this, he said, what is there about babies which makes us hug and kiss and fondle them so that even an enemy would give them help at that age? A baby touches us in a way that almost nothing else does. And this is what the infancy narratives remind us. That however hopeless and helpless our situations can seem, we need each other. And we are manifestations of that interconnectedness. Walt Whitman wrote a poem called I Sing of Myself, a celebration of myself. And that sounds very selfish, but if we let ourselves go through that immaturity of looking for our own personal meaning, it leads us to interconnectedness. This is from Whitman's, he says, I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Right? Some people can see the sacred in others first. Other people see it first in themselves. But either path takes us to the same place. That paraphrase has a great turning place. She asks, why do I matter? Then she says, but we do matter. God cares for us most of all. And through us, God cares for all of the world. Then this is Psalm 8 again. You put everything into our care, all the animals, all the birds, all the fish, everything that creeps or flies or runs or swims, even the land and the air and the sea. It is all ours to look after. God, our living God, you are amazing. So I think it's very normal to say, what child is this? What is the purpose of a human being? To ask, why is there suffering? But ultimately, those questions lead us to our common lives. And sometimes we first see that in the face of a baby. Dante was the one that wrote Paradise Lost, but he said there's 3 parts of paradise that are still there for us. He said, paradise is still there for us in the stars, in the flowers, and in children. That there are places that remind us that our true value doesn't come from our profession, our accomplishments, our achievements. So if we failed completely, or we're in a place where others have failed us, and we don't know right now what we're supposed to do, Christmas calls us to our naked humanity. To remember a child can't speak, it can't do anything, it's absolutely helpless. And yet there's no other, it's like you look in the face of a child and that's the most valuable being that you can imagine. So what good is a child? A child reminds us of the beauty of our naked humanity. A child reminds us how desperately we need each other. And so each of us matters. Each of us is needed. And then finally, when we look in the face of a baby and we see that strange light, that glow that comes from someplace else that is too mysterious to understand, we realize that we too, like that baby, are both personal. We have our personal lives, but we are also cosmic events. If we allow ourselves to take in that gift, then we need never question ever again whether our lives have meaning. I invite you now to your own reflection on these words.
We invite you now to a moment of silent contemplation.